Hello and welcome. My name is Peace Mitchell and I'm co-founder of Women Changing the World Press. Before we begin today, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners and elders of the land that I live and work on, the people of Mamu country in North Queensland. And I would also like to pay my respects and acknowledge traditional owners and elders, past and present, right across Australia and the Torres Strait. Well, I'm so excited to be celebrating our newest book, Women Living Fearlessly. This book features 25 incredible women from all over the world sharing their stories of how they have begun to live their life courageously and without fear. And I'm so honored to have one of our fabulous co-authors joining us today, Veronica, also known as V. Haslam. Please join me on stage, V.
Hi, Peace. Thanks so much. I'm really super excited to be here with you.
Oh, it's so lovely to see you, V. Now, for people who haven't met you before, I would love you to introduce yourself and tell us a bit about you and the work that you do.
Okay, so the work that I do has sort of evolved, I think, as often it does through our personal journeys and the winding path that can find itself on. I am a leadership transformation coach and I work with organisations and teams really about exploring the heart of the matter during times of change in particular. So during times of change and uncertainty as human beings, we can really find ourselves in places of heightened vulnerability, not really knowing, what it means to us, and our deep fears can often emerge in those moments. And so what I really love doing is being present with individuals, with leaders and their teams in organisational settings and also in personal settings to really explore what's coming up for us as human beings, the feelings that are emerging, our narratives, and applying a mindful and heartful approach as we really compassionately sit with ourselves and get to know ourselves more and each other so that we can build connection, mainly connection to ourselves, but enabling that connection with each other so that we can show up in our highest selves and in alignment with our highest purpose.
Oh, I love that so much, V. That's amazing. And your chapter really delves into some of these things that you've just talked about. You begin your chapter talking about a moment where some things came up for you where it was quite uncomfortable. I'll read this quote from your chapter. You said, "As I sat in the circle, my inner critic started screaming inside my head, while on the outside, I was mostly silent." Can you tell us what was going on for you at this moment?
Oh, that moment sat with me literally for almost 2 years, which when I look back, that just feels like such a elongated period of time because, 2 years is a long time. But I literally sat in that state where I could feel myself running on like a hamster wheel in my head, constantly feeling like I was the only one in the room that wasn't able to contribute anything that was intelligent. I'm watching everyone around me. This is a cohort of about 20 or so of us that we're doing a postgraduate program. And I'm watching all these other super intelligent, very articulate people around me as if, they were totally in their stride and no one else was sort of fumbling their way through. And so for me, that felt very isolating. I was an emotional basket case a lot of the time during that 2 years. And what I appeared like on the outside, as you've just beautifully shared with that quote, was, you probably couldn't have seen a lot of it on the outside. Occasionally I would break down emotionally and, and the course program director would be sharing in those moments with me. But mostly I would sit there and everything seemed pretty normal on the outside. And so I think what that really gave me over a 2-year period and beyond is this deep curiosity about what it is that is really sitting there in our human experience in the interactions that we have with each other in groups and, and other connections, and how what we see on the surface can often be very different to what's actually being felt and experienced. And when we can really enable ourselves and give ourselves permission to explore that, what is really fascinating is that often what I find in my work with teams and individuals is that it's really it's a moment of freedom when you really recognize that you're not the only one that is feeling like that, and expressing that with each other in itself is sometimes, it's not really the way that we've been probably conditioned and trained in our professional training. However, when we really do allow ourselves that space, it is absolutely liberating and really empowering. So, yeah.
Yeah, incredible, incredible. And it sounds like as much as that moment was so triggering for you and brought up a lot of fears and uncomfortableness and self-doubt and all of those things, ultimately it was freeing because you took the time to do the work and keep going. Another quote in here is that when I didn't know what was expected of me, I didn't know who to be. And so this kind of open-ended format that the course was completely unstructured and different from everything else that you'd experienced. Can you tell us a bit more about this and why that made it so difficult for you?
Oh, yeah. It was like I didn't know it at the time. So another beautiful example of the gift of hindsight, really. But at the time, I didn't realise that they'd stripped away a lot of the known structures of what what a university course looked like, how you would interact with that as a student. And so I had been a student, as many of us have, through primary school and in high school and all that sort of thing. And I had and also had a undergraduate university experience, so there was context already in what I expected of that experience. And so when I stepped into it, I had been carrying all these preconditioned biases that I wasn't even aware of. And then very quickly, the design of the program was really intentional in stripping away those known structures. So I sat there and I had no idea who to be, how to show up as a student initially. And then that actually, through the hamster wheel in my head and increasingly feeling like I was not able to express myself in this space, not knowing what was expected, no reading lists, no assessments and exams, I really didn't know who to be. And so a lot of the exploration actually in that program, because it was all about innovation. So in order to innovate, we do need to be able to transform, and we need to be able to let go of what we've known in terms of our identity and how that has shaped us, and be able to transform into a new and rebirth into a new version, I guess, of ourselves. And so in many ways, like, the stereotypical butterfly sort of story, the caterpillar to butterfly, it was that in motion, but I didn't know that, and it was very painful. But I'd realised that I had defined who I was based on many of the roles that I had taken up in my life. And so when I really didn't have a role to play that was familiar to me, because I didn't know what they were asking me to be as a student, I really didn't know who I was. And so, as you said, Peace, I think, while it was super emotionally chaotic for me at the time, it was ultimately such an amazing gift, because it sparked this curiosity around, well, what is actually going on for me, and who that amazingly, deep eternal question of who am I? And it just really has led me off onto a rabbit burrow of all of the unfolding, layers of what that means, which I'm still in the midst of today.
Yeah. So fascinating, so fascinating. You also talk about in your chapter that our childhood experiences are stored in our emotional and energetic being. And sometimes those are things that come up. And I guess the transformation that you went through was an opportunity for you to peel back those layers and see the things that had happened in the past that you still needed to heal from and deal with in the present.
Yes.
Is that true?
Yes, definitely. And I think that being stored in our bodies, in our energy, in our subconscious, so a lot of the time I think as humans we like to think that we're in control of what we see, and we can make sense of the story. And I think that as I've stepped along this path for myself and also with others, the more that I am stepping on this path, the more I realize I don't actually know. And I think that in itself has just been such an amazing revelation, because it's given me the greater freedom to explore things, and to really explore it as an observer rather than being necessarily dragged right into it. So, a lot of the stuff that we have as woundings as human beings are painful. And we develop ways to protect and defend ourselves from that, and they appear in our life as, these repetitive things that we continue to sort of, somehow this happens again, maybe a different person, a different situation on the surface. But I'm now sort of deeply curious about how I see them as clues. And as I'm walking along the path, I just sort of see like there's something else that's highlighted, and I wonder what that might reveal. And so I think that while I still, like, most humans have still a lot of that stuff that is still in my body, in my experience, that I haven't yet seen, I tend to see it now as being an expansive path, rather than at the time when my inner critic was really strong. It was telling me that I was not good enough and that, I was failing at something. Whereas now I see it really as an expansive path, and I see it as being an endlessly fascinating as to what could possibly reveal itself. And so I dig into these things now really happily, even though I may still feel emotionally triggered, and I may have moments of where it's painful still. But the context of it, I think, has really changed for me, and I'm really grateful that is one of the everlasting gifts that seem to have come out of this.
Oh, so incredible. So incredible. Well, thank you so much for being here today. Thank you for sharing your story in Women Living Fearlessly. I know that there will be so many of our readers who will be very inspired to learn more about you and the work that you do as well, because your story is so inspiring and amazing. And yeah, thank you for being here today. I've really enjoyed chatting with you.
Oh, thanks so much, Peace. Thanks for everything you're doing, and to Katie and all the team. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Well, we've got to wrap up now, but if you're tuning in, make sure you grab your copy of Women Living Fearlessly at wcwpress.com, and we'll see you again soon. Thanks so much, V. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye.